Hi, welcome to the bathtub. You know me, it's the old master bather, or as we like to call ourselves in China when we're doing whatever it is we do there. We're Pao Zhao Zhao Shou. Pao Zhao. You want to copy that down. You may want to copy those characters down. Pao Zhao Zhao Shou. Very important. It fulfills an important function in ancient Asian society, which is the foamy bathtub professor. That's how we call us. We call ourselves here the master bather. That's untranslatable that way. Theirs doesn't translate that perfect this way, but all ancient cultures, all significant cultures, have people like myself, shaman of the pointless reading. That's another term that's often used for us. Anyway, we're this is our new era. We've talked about it. This is called bathing with a vengeance. We're going to be bathing with a vengeance right as we watch our planet burn itself right down to this right down to the embers and both morally and psychologically and physically. And we've got our mineral water, and we're reading, especially we're pointlessly lately, and we're really trying to find a lot of extra time. So maybe more than an hour for me, as far as I'm concerned, reading pointless, pleasurable books. Okay, this is what we call classical gas. You have to start off the show imagining Mason Williams playing classical gas, or Glenn Campbell plays it very well, and we can't play it ourselves, or we get sued. We do classical novels, which you're supposed to read, and we ask ourselves, hell yeah, or hell or nay, nay or yeah. We have two main judgments. Nay, we haven't hit a nay yet. Yeah, and then we have hell yeah. Now, Henry James hasn't really hit the hell yeah for us yet. We know that he's gone up in my estimation over the past year, and at different times in my life. I've mentioned before, we talked about Portrait of a Lady, which is the one that I always did sort of like, and I'm sort of reading him a lot for various reasons now. And just recently, one of the books I would say is a hell yeah, and I'm going to give it a hell yeah right away. So there's no suspense. You don't have to wait till the end of the show. You can just stop watching if you're just watching to get the final judgment. This is a hell yeah. It's The Turn of the Screw. It's in a little volume, a little cool little penguin volume called The Turn of the Screw and Other Stories. I thought of putting it on Short Story Roundabout, but it's really a short novel, and it's not a short story, so I have to really talk about it. And look, it's just cool penguin paperbacks. They're just really cool. So anyway, I decided to reread this recently, and I reread it basically in a day. It's a couple of hours of work, of reading, of pleasure. It's perfect for the bathtub. You get 2 or 3 good soaks out of it. It is, if you like Henry James or don't like Henry James, many may not like this. It's a great thriller. It's a great ghost story. I've developed more and more affection for ghost stories over the past few years, as you may know if you followed this completely pointless show. And I wanted to reread it again. I always forget everything. I've said this before. I forget everything. I've seen The Innocents. I've seen 2 or 3 versions of this book. I've read the book, I'm pretty sure, twice before, but even when I read it this time, I'd completely forgotten the whole thing. And I will just give you a quick summary. All I can say is if you like ghost stories, it is a great ghost story. This is my wife's cool bookmarks. Didn't mean to try to sell them, but she does sell them if you want to buy some cool bookmarks. I think that's hand painted. Sometimes she does hand painted bookmarks. And I'll give you a quick summary. So I'm also reading. I mentioned this before. I really enjoyed the Sheldon M. Novick, the first volume biographies of Henry James, about 10 years ago. It may have been 15 or as much as 15 or 20 years ago now. It was when early in my move to a certain new flat I loved in London. They had these at the Judd Street Books, the great guys at Judd Street Books. I bought both volumes there, and I read the first one. Not being a big fan of Henry James, but Sheldon Novick's take on Henry James, for some reason, I find really enjoyable. I really enjoyed reading the first volume. He sort of, he doesn't belabor it, but he brings out the gay relationships and the homosexual relationships in Henry James without it feeling like they're just prying in a way. He kind of brings out in the letters and makes it clear that he has some affairs with some various men in his life that are very important to him. He seems like a very, very social man. he really did love having people to dinner and having people stay and going to people's houses and going to people's dinner parties and stuff. Total opposite of myself. And I've finally gotten around to reading the second volume, which I'm loving. Really just love reading these biographies. And he's actually helping me enjoy James more. Anyway, it seems that James was writing those long triple-decker novels, such as Portrait of a Lady, and then he got into writing for the theater. I can't even imagine reading a stage play by Henry James. I don't know. I have the feeling it sounds his characters just talk and talk. But while he was doing that, he started writing a lot of his short stories, including this. And he sort of knew he was writing a great thriller when he wrote The Turn of the Screw from the Correspondence. He sort of knew he was going to really get everybody, and it's a terrific read. So I'll give you the quick rundown of this. It's got an opening which doesn't make sense to me when I first read it, but the opening is very important because it almost feels like it's forgotten. It's a frame narrative, so you have a couple of characters talking about ghost stories, and then this guy says, I have a really good ghost story. He brings out all these papers, which are the letters written by this woman. I forget her name already. Anyway, I don't remember her name, but it'll come to me later. No, it probably won't come to me. But this woman who left all these papers describing her experiences in this house. And the story begins with her recalling how she was hired to be a governess for these two kids, who I think are the niece and nephew of a man who lives in London. He's very well off, and he brings her in for an interview. And this is the opening of the book, and it's really important. You don't realize it the first time you read it. She's quite attracted to this guy. He's very well off, and he tells her the whole story, how these kids were really bright, and they're very interested, but they've been left. Their parents died, and he wants someone to raise them and teach them to become good people, but he doesn't want to ever hear about them again. He wants her to go out there and never call him, never write him, never tell her anything about these two kids. He just wants to wash his hands of them. That's all. It's a very weird relationship. And she really, in order to please this man, who she's actually attracted to, she tries to do everything by herself. So in order to fulfill this affection, she plans never to see him again. Anyway, that's the setup, and it puts you in a really weird relationship with the narrator. She goes to this house. There's a governess. There's a young boy who's just been thrown out of his school. And the school, as soon as she gets there, as this young woman gets to this house out in the country, they send her a letter saying this kid has done something horrible. You never know what it is. The kid's done something horrible, and the young woman says she's pretty disturbed by it. But at the same time, she meets the kid, and the kid's really charming. And she says, well, I'm going to love you anyway. I'm going to take care of you anyway. We don't know what it is. We do eventually find that the kid and his sister were taken care of by a groundskeeper of some sort, and the previous teacher, the previous governess. This guy was very good looking, and he had this young woman, and they had some weird sexual relationship with lots of people in the area, and they had some weird relationship with these kids, which we don't know anything about it, except almost the worst things you can imagine are probably what happened. And as a young woman, this narrator is going through this house, she sees the visions of this man and this woman, the ghosts, who are both dead. They're both dead, and she sees visions of them. And it's done so well, you really don't know if she's really seeing these people or she starts developing fantasies about it. But what becomes very disturbing is she's pretty sure the kids see them too, but the kids are not telling her. So that's the whole. That's half of the book. But I don't tell you any more than that, except that the creepiest part of the book is she's always looking at these kids and she sees them looking in different directions, and she's always imagining that they're seeing these two horrible people. Anyway, it's a brilliant setup for a book, brilliant setup for a horror story. And I'll just read a little passage. Again, I think reading James sometimes there's something about his prose that really throws me off a bit. And I have to say, I would quote some of these passages. I should have written down. Sheldon Novick does a very good job of describing James's prose and what's good and what's not so good about it. He's got his eyes open about what he likes and doesn't like about James. Anyway, here's a part where she's looking at she's watching the children, and she says, the fact that the days passed for me without another encounter with these ghosts ought, it would have appeared, to have done something toward soothing my nerves. Since the light brush that second night on the upper landing of the presence of a woman at the foot of the stair, I had seen nothing, whether in or out of the house, that one had better not have seen. There was many a corner round which I expected to come upon Quint. Quint is the male ghost, this horrible man. And many a situation that, in a merely sinister way, would have favored the appearance of Miss Jessel, the previous governess who's dead. The summer had turned, the summer had gone, the autumn had dropped upon Bly and had blown out half our lights. The place, with its grey sky and withered garlands, its bared spaces and scattered dead leaves, was like a theatre after the performance, all strewn with crumpled playbills. There were exactly states of the air, conditions of sound and of stillness, unspeakable impressions of the kind of ministering moment that brought back to me, long enough to catch it, the feeling of the medium in which, that June evening out of doors, I had had my first sight of Quint, and in which, too, at those other instants, I had, after seeing him through the window, looked for him in vain in the circle of shrubbery. Sorry, that noise was something on eBay. The cash register sound. It doesn't fit with the cash register sound. The ka-ching sound is not in Henry James. He has a wonderful way of getting into this woman and the moodiness and the sense of just this ambiance. And James is almost entirely ambiance in large sections of his books. Works very well. So if you want to read a good ghost story for Christmas, I think this is a good one. And we're going to be doing more Henry James. And I still like that Novick biography a lot. Stay safe. Bathe with a vengeance. We're bathing with a vengeance right into the 22nd century. I may not get there with you to the 22nd century, but we'll be trying. And we'll talk to you soon. Stay safe.